Good afternoon all. I am Professor Vidya Rao. On behalf of Cummins College of Engineering, welcome you all in 4 days, second session of our SCTP. From last 3 days, we acquired the knowledge on AI and machine learning techniques. That is how to do the data extraction for AI using MATLAB, machine learning with AWS, and diving into machine learning. So dear all, today is on 4th day of our session. We have with us Mr. Sarangdhar Sharma, a senior technical program manager in Acme Technology, Bangalore. A session 2 speaker who is going to talk on industrial approach of AI. It's a great pleasure to me to introduce you, sir. Sir has come, I will share a PPTs with you. You can see the PPTs?
We can, yeah.
So it's a great pleasure to me to introduce you, sir. Sir has completed his BE in Mechanical Engineer from Kalingana University. He is having total 6 years of IT experience. That is, he played a various role. He worked as a delivery manager, delivery lead and technical project manager in TCS Mumbai. And also he worked as an engineer manager 4 months in Global Logic Nagpur. And currently he is working as a technical program manager in Acme Technology, Bangalore. And Acme Technology, Bangalore, it's a intelligent edge platform, is one of the world's largest distribution computing platforms. I will also like to say that sir has been certified with several renowned certification. Sir did the professional Scrum Master, Data Warehouse and Analytics, ITIL Service Operation, Project Manager, Management and Advanced Data Architecture and Modeling. So dear all participants, I request everyone to welcome Mr. Sarangdhar Sharma sir for today's session. And now I request you, sir, please take over the session. Yes, sir, please.
Thanks, Vidya, and thank you for introducing me to all, right? And thank you everyone for this wonderful platform, right? So I have like already visited Cummins College when I was there in Nagpur, working as a delivery manager for TCS. Right? I think
yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was a wonderful experience, right? I know I had interacted with few of the faculty members, few of the, I think the final year students. That was in year 2019 when the way of living was completely different. And today here we are talking probably from the corners of our houses, but still able to connect. So thanks for, arranging this. Okay, moving forward, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence in industry, right? The way industry has been approaching towards it, the way it is using the AI, right? Few of the products, then about its evolution, the way it was, the way it is, and the way it will be in a couple of years, or let's say in a couple of decades. Other than that, we'll also be talking about few of the challenges from the industry, right? So that we can apply the practical knowledge of what AI can do for us in our day-to-day lives, and which is being taken or utilized by several industries. So I'll take a use case Before that, just wanted to understand from you guys, how do you want to make it? You want to make it as a monologue, or you want to talk about it and then proceed? I prefer talking, interacting, engaging, and then moving ahead. That will help us gain a lot of insights involved in Q&As while we move ahead. But I'm good with monologue as well. I mean, I talking about it, and maybe once you guys feel like at the end of the session, we can have the Q&A as well. So anything is open. Meanwhile, if I just continue with the presentation, you have any questions, feel free to ping in the group. I know I'll be more than happy to take it as well. Once we are done with the presentation, you still have something to clarify, feel free to reach out to me. My number is there. You can reach out to me via LinkedIn or any other platform as well. I'll be more than happy to help. Okay, so moving ahead. You guys, okay, you guys will have to excuse me for a minute, because I don't think my system has access to the Zoom sharing. I'll have to give it, and that will restart Zoom. So I might drop off, but I'll join in like in a minute. That works for you guys, right?
Yeah, okay, sir, no problems.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm back. So I'll just share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you pass on the privilege to me, please?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, so my screen is visible to all, right? I believe it would be. Okay,
Yes, sir,
we
we
are,
can see your details.
sorry. So I believe you guys are able to see my screen, and I'm audible. In case there is an interruption, you feel that there's a glitch, please feel free to tell it upfront. Okay, so we are here to talk about artificial intelligence in industry and the way forward, right? The way industry is going to use this, right? The moment we start talking about artificial intelligence, it normally gives a picture that it's mostly a sci-fi kind of a thing, wherein you're talking about very hi-fi robots, or something which is not related to a day-to-day kind of a thing. So that's the notion all around, and it has been like that since many years. Although in last couple of years we have seen that there's a trend going towards making it more normal in day-to-day lives. Many people have access to it. They are talking about it, they are reading about it, and they have access to many of the applications or tools through which they can explore it as well, both on the personal and professional front as well, right? So moving ahead, AI, artificial intelligence, it is what it is exactly, right? And why is it a buzzword in today's era, where we have so many things available, but why is it making the kind of noise or the kind of impact it's making today? Okay, so I'll just start with a simple introduction what artificial intelligence is like. So it's, of course, it's a field of science, and it just aims to create some intelligent machines. And when I say machines, these could be both the physical machines and the virtual machines, right? there could be bots on any of the websites or any of the data science applications which are using the underlying data to mine the meaning out of it, and making sure that it is also reacting out of that understanding or that analytics, right? It could be again the physical machines as well, such as robots deployed in any of the warehouses of the Amazon, right? Amazon, and when we talk about its warehousing system, it has like the world's largest warehouses all over the world. And then it has also connected robots and connected systems. They call it, they have a separate organization in Amazon called as Worldwide Fulfillment Technologies. So WWFT. So basically they make sure that they're working with their teams using these techniques of AI and ML to automate a lot of those steps, which will help them reduce the human intervention in the overall process and also increase the operational efficiency. And when I say operational efficiency, which means that lesser error, faster turnaround time, right? And then of course that will be cost effective. Now, as I was mentioning, right, there's a popular belief that AI is around science fiction, like there'll be some AI manifestation, super intelligent robots, right? That's what we have seen in movies, right? The first glimpse of what a robot is was not from our textbooks, right? Was not from our physical or the real world. It was through the movies, right? And the movies they created a picture or paint picture which was mostly talking about robots which are very powerful, intelligent, more intelligent than us, and it looks like it's very difficult to create. However, today AI is transcending that layer to different human layers of our lives. Whether you talk about a banking or finance industry, right? They have so many bots and they're using AI and ML like anything, right? In threat detection, in security parameters, in making sure that the debt what they're creating on their business will be recoverable, right? So they have a predictive modeling out there based on AI and ML, right? And there's a data science branch involved there as well. So today it is everywhere, right? Whether the thing is, we might realize it, we might not realize it. So that changes as we go and interact with more and more applications. Now, when I say that it is just about creating intelligent machines to emulate human cognition. So human cognition is basically behaving as humans. So let's suppose I am there is fire, so I'll have a threat perception from the fire. So there'll be certain activities that I'll be taking up to make sure that I'm safe, such as throwing water on the fire, moving away from the building in which fire is there. Similarly, creating such response systems, right? So when we talk about it, it is not just creating something which will behave as human or as intelligent as a human being is. But before moving to that process, there are several other steps that one need to take care of to reach that particular process where you could automate something and expect action out of that. Now, moving ahead, how do we do that, right? How do we know that in a particular scenario, we should behave like as we behave, or behave as we are expected to behave? Now, I'll give you just an example, right? How do we know that in our examinations there is a set of questions and we have to answer it? How do we know that? In case anybody wants to answer, I just want to make it a little more interactive. How do your students, or when we were students in colleges or schools, or let's say in our pre-primary classes, were knowing that this is a particular question set, we need to answer it? How do we know that? Anyone? Okay. So okay, let me break it up. Let's make it interactive. Let's talk about it. How do we know that that it's hot? We need to switch on the fan. This is the basic principle of AI. How do we know it's hot? We need to switch on the fan. Anyone from the audience? It's just the basic principle on which on what we behave. Okay. So basically, there's a sensation of feeling warm or feeling hot, right? So our mind slowly gets trained by like, so there is a certain temperature in which our body is comfortable, right? And when it crosses that ceiling, based on weather conditions, neuron action, we learn by experiencing it, reading instructions, uh, that's all right. That's each one of those statements are correct, right? Now, tell me one another thing. How does brain process it, or how do we know that okay, it's the weather condition is bad or it's hot and we need to switch on the fan? Because we previously we were in that position, and when the fan was switched on when we were kids, right, we realized okay, this will give us some cool air, we'll feel better. So there is a set of data accumulated in our memory, basically our brain, and when it immediately knows that okay, if it's hot we need to switch on the fan, if it is cold we might want to switch it off, right? So similarly, when a machine has to get trained on certain actions and it has to behave as one who wants it to behave, it needs to fed with certain amount of data, and then the data needs to be trained for better action. How do we do that? So there are certain techniques to achieve that. The first one is machine learning. Everybody knows that. That's the other buzzword in the industry and the academia as well. Today, everybody talks about machine learning, and I believe that many of the universities they have also included it as part. And this in simple terms means ability to learn from data, nothing else. So you have a set of data, you go there and you just check, okay, if this is the scenario, how should I react? In simple terms, that's it. So you have a set of data processed, you have the data mining capabilities built on top of that. You can call it as a data lake or a data repository. On top of that, there's the layer which has calculated everything, there's a meaning out of it, and you go there, and when you are in a certain situation, you refer to it, okay, what happens when this is there? So what happens when you're facing the scenario for the first time, or not you, the machine or the bot or the AI system, what we created, if it goes, refers to that set of data or data repository, and that condition is not there. So that is why AI is an ever evolving field, which means it will learn through hit and trial. So it will try to do the predictive analytics based on the data there, right? What if certain cases comes up? So it will try to behave in a certain way, and then that use case will be deposited there, or that data set will be deposited there, and then when the next time when the certain scenario comes up, it will be referred. Similarly, when there is a condition which was not there, it will be again learned through predictive analytics and the hit and trial method. The other one is deep learning. So this is nothing but mimicking the activity in the layers of neurons. So basically in our brains, right? So it's basically talking and going deep into the way a human brain recognizes a lot of complex problems or critical situations. Basically, by reading through the set of data or the memory engine what our brain has. So it goes through that, understands the problem, and then accordingly it helps the system to behave. again, the third technique is reinforcement learning. So basically, in this, you have software agents that are fed with some goal-oriented behavior, wherein which means that that this is a particular way in which my system should behave. So goal is already fixed, and then you have to reach there by doing trial and error method. Again, the other technique is transfer learning. So basically, you transfer it. So you have certain knowledge on a particular area or a particular scenario. You transfer that same knowledge to some other scenario and see if that fits into that overall window of it, right? The last one is good old-fashioned AI, which means, I mean, we have been doing AI. When I'll go to the next slides, I'll show that when was AI actually being talked about, and since when it has been in industry and all around us, right? So it is just about talking about the old-fashioned AI, what we had in industry. Now there's different ways to achieve that, right? So there's a computer vision. We have a challenge out there in our in this session only on the computer vision, basically related to images and videos and analyzing those and coming out with better results to help our end customers. The second one is natural language processing. So natural language processing is I'll try to give you an example. So basically, let's suppose Government of India is launching a program to vaccinate people for corona. They have already launched it, right? And they believe that this is a good program and they should fulfill all the needs of the people. But then they also want to improve the process. But the problem is in a country where you have 130 crore people, more than like 1 billion, 1.3 billion people out there. How do you take that feedback from all of those? You cannot go to them and ask about it, right? So maybe you can gain the data from social media, let's say Twitter, Facebook, any other platform, right? Now you have set of data, you have crores of people saying, okay, this is good, or this is bad, or this is something what we could have achieved through this, right? Now, how do they know that particularly this guy is talking about an improvement, this guy is saying the process is good, this guy is saying we might need to change something? So gaining insight from the language, the human language, is called natural language processing, or NLP, right? So that's what. So basically, a human is there, he or she is interacting with a system, which is in this case Twitter or Facebook, and then we're trying to mine data from all those and make sure that the decision making what we are looking for is taken care of. Similarly, and then there are two steps. One, you take out the meaning out of the data dump, and then also put that to action. So when I say put that to action, is actually artificial intelligence. So there are two parts. You have a set of trainable data on what you train, and then you take actions based on that. So basically, if this is the scenario, that's how we have to react. Again, speech processing is there. So basically, it's related to mostly to NLP, but there are certain things. Let's suppose when I'm talking using computer vision and NLP, they can have a automated subtitle. So that way they are coming up with speech processing and all those related stuff. Predictive analytics. So basically reading the historical patterns and conditions and then predicting how things will be in future. So basically that's what they try to do in mostly in economics as well. So when you read about that what will happen after the pandemic is gone. So many of the economists are predicting that whenever there was a pandemic like this, or a troublesome situation like this on Earth, and when it was gone, the growth and development was multifold what it was prior to pandemic. So they are doing it based on they are doing this prediction or predictive analytics based on the set of data what they had accumulated. Okay, so data mining and data warehousing the same. They are not same. So data mining is basically gaining insight from any set of data. any set of data. So basically taking meaning out of set of data what we have. It could be in form of your Excel sheets, it can be a form of your CSVs, your databases, cloud, and anything. Whereas data warehousing is a particular way of storing data. So basically, as you have a go down or you have a warehouse, right? So in warehouse, you have a certain way of storing things. So when you create a warehouse or a data warehouse, basically, you know that, okay, a particular set of data belonging to, let's suppose, to I'll give an example. Let's suppose TCS was there. So TCS has different departments. So there's an HR department, there's a finance department, there's sales department, there are operations, there are admin, and then there are business related stuff there, right? And somebody wants to understand what is the cost of running all the departments. So basically the cost of running HR, finance, and likewise, right? When they want to do it, they bring data from all that, so all those sources to one system and store in a particular way. And when I say in a particular way, I'll give you that example. So let's suppose they store all data related to the HR department to a particular area that is called as data mart. Similarly, when you have data from a finance department, you store that in a data mart. So data warehouse has multiple data marts, which data marts are nothing but set of a field or a repository or a sub repository which has similar kind of data available in that, right? So when you take out meaning from that data warehousing system, it is called data mining. So data mining is the process of taking insights, whereas data warehousing is the way you store it. Similarly, to store data, you have a separate system, a different system as well, that is called as a data lake as well. Okay, so I hope I answered your question. Thanks. Okay, so we'll just move ahead with this. We covered predictive analytics. We'll move ahead with robotics. So again, robotics is we all know that it's all about intelligence and smart robots, which are making our life easier. They could interact with humans, they could interact with machines as well. So a human to machine interaction, a machine to machine interaction, and then out of that interaction, they also take some action. So basically, for instance, you might have a robot in future in your houses which can serve all your daily needs. So that's possible. They have those systems, and to give you a glimpse of that, many of the e-commerce giants, right? For example, Walmart or Amazon, right? They have many robots deployed in their worldwide fulfillment technologies centers, or to call it as a warehouse system in a layman language. They have it already, and they're using it, they're training it, and making those more and more smarter day by day. The third one is a multi-agent collaboration. So there's nothing, it's about just creating few agents, let's say on your website as well, or any of their applications, and then they interact with each other to evolve the underlying algorithm and the actions based out of that. So that's how those were the techniques, and that's how we do it. Now, a brief history of AI. So it has been making a lot of noise in recent past, definitely. We also want to understand, when did it evolve, right? Is it a what's your take on that? Has AI evolved in near term, or was it an old thing? It was always there since the advent of IT and software and all that. What's your take on that? You can just type in your responses. Is it a new thing, a recent thing, has been there since last 10-15 years, or it was always there since the software or the computer industry is there? I would wait for responses for a minute. Just type in. Yeah. Always there, I guess. Okay. Any more responses? There for quite some time. Okay. Yeah. So perfect. Okay. Moving on. So we'll see that it was almost always there since the advent of the computer or the software industry, or I would not even call it as an industry. So since the software or the softwares or the computers were there, it was almost there. So the first time when it was the term artificial intelligence was coined was 1956. So many of us were not even there probably at this juncture. So AI is very, very, very old. It has just evolved. It has taken some time because it's a very complex phenomenon to make sure that it reaches to the targeted audience. And then we have the kind of infrastructure, the systems required to do such, or to create such a kind of intelligent systems. They were also not there, right? So even if today, let's suppose you create an hypothesis that could, okay, it was there, yeah. So when you create an hypothesis that all my app, I'll just give command verbally and it will create something, a bot, right? Today it's still 10% is possible, but then again you need to write code. There are other the low level coding platforms available, but then it is not at the extent where you just say that, okay, create a web page with these and these features and give it to me. It's still not possible because we don't have those intelligent systems still, and the infrastructure lying beneath that. But I am very, very sure that next 2-3 decades will be there. So you say it and a certain application will be created from the different agents deployed or the bots working on the system. 1956 to 1974, the golden years of AI, backed by logic-based problem-solving approaches. So basically, this was the humans were interacting with the systems and they were imparting their problem-solving approaches to the system. So this laid out the groundwork on which the AI foundation was built. The next was a period of a brief period of 6-7 years. And there was a limited technological breakthrough, not very successful, but limited to few systems and and it was exposed to few of the industries and a few of the individuals who were working on it. 1980 to 87, this was the period when computers started reaching the common human lives. People started to know about it. This was the time when people started thinking about we should do away with our normal ledgers in the banks and then go towards digitization and all that. That was the buzz that period of time, and that is when the rise of the knowledge-based expert systems started to happen, because the infrastructure required to make such a system was in making. The next was expert system becoming hard to scale, the second AI winter, 87 to 93. So I was talking about the infrastructure, because when you talk about creating such an advanced system, the infrastructure required, the servers, the kind of CPU capacities you will need, right? Those are very difficult when we were in 1987, 1983. So they call it AI second winter, basically a period where a lull period where we were not making much progress because of the limited availability of the kind of infrastructure required for making such advanced systems. The next period was 1993 to 2001. So this is a period where actually AI took a lot of shape, reached a lot of people's life, became a common term. So today when we talk about artificial intelligence, many of us will know about it, how, and not as much as an industry expert who is working on it will know, but again we'll understand, okay, what does it mean and what are the chances that it will impact our lives in next few years, right? And it was a data driven AI. So when I say data driven, basically the set of data available to us, doing the data mining, coming out with the results, and then influencing the decision making process. So that was there. This was the period when the BI analytics, business intelligence and analytics, was growing. This was the period when after BI analytics and AI, the ML was in picture. This was the period when they started talking about natural language processing. This was the period when we had like super fast computers, and they were able to, and the world started talking about the cloud. So this was a very, very significant period, a long period where we make significant strides towards AI. And today we are in this phase, what we completed, or I would say it is still continuing. We have been able to create a lot of autonomous systems. We have been able to work on a lot of machine learning algorithms. We have been able to work through deep learning, and also we have been able to take AI to different industries. And all the parts of the world. So today it is in the medical field. Today it is in the BFSI. We know that it's in the defense, many of the defense systems. So it has reached almost everywhere. So that's how AI evolved, and that's how it progressed through many decades. So today it's almost 70 years that AI has been there, and people has been using it. Moving ahead. So this is again, this is just the expansion of what we were talking about, the classical AI, basically, or the good old-fashioned AI, and the way it was impacting the human lives then, and they use it, right? And the next phase of it, which is the deep learning revolution. We talked about what deep learning is and how it is impacting IoT and then AI, right? So today we have a lot of connected machines or connected systems talking to each other. Like today we have in our heavy industries, like on shop floors, we have so many systems lying and talking about it, collecting signals and information and logs from all those shop floors, and making sure that we are mining data out of it and training our existing machines on the floors to react in a certain way. So that all is happening. So today we have reached this layer, which was this phase, which was 2012 to 2019. Now, what is the way ahead? So we have talked about 1990 was the classical AI. We reached 2015, which was led by the data-driven AI, which was nothing but the BI analytics supported through different techniques, and we are in the phase of deep learning paradigm or regime, right? So now, what will happen when we actually reach what we are envisioning to achieve, right? So we want to have a virtual embodiment, a physical embodiment, and bionic embodiment. These are all three different pillars what we want to create to make sure that AI helps one and all in the industry and day-to-day life, right? So when I say virtual embodiment, right? So virtual embodiment of the AI systems, basically. So those could be in different applications used in our day-to-day lives or in the industry. The physical embodiment is basically the robots working on the different warehouses, industries, and all that, right? And bionic embodiment is again in the field of medicines, wherein they are using a lot of neuron signals and creating those sensors to make sure that the treatment and the prediction of many diseases, which was very difficult, and the prediction accuracy was not that great. So all that will improve by a great margin in coming years, right? And this is the ladder. We talked about it, right? How it happened and how we reached there. So this is the next target of AI over a decade, I would say. Okay, this is a more based on what is industry and academia doing together. So it's basically a research conducted by some of the universities and the areas they want to focus, right? So this is more, we'll not spend much time on this, because this is just to give you a glimpse of that many of the universities and many of the industries and the venture capitalists or the VC funds are spending a lot of money on that. And on the other hand, the universities are also publishing a lot of papers talking about it, writing in the scientific journals and all that, right? So The first one is the liveliness of AI as a discipline. So today in our universities specifically, and strictly talking in India, we don't have an AI as a discipline or a branch. It is still part of somewhere. Some of its parts are being covered in mechatronics. Mechatronics is still evolving, where you learn about a lot of those robots and all that, and otherwise it is being still dealt with the computer science curriculum what we have, right? But the trend has been increasing, the AI academia industry dynamics. So when you see at this graph, this is the VC investment. Just look at the investment that the industry is making in the AI field since 2000, let's say 11, right? It has been just going up and up and up. Whereas when you see that the enrollment has also seen a steady increase. So basically, people enrolling in these courses, these activities, is saying a growth year on year. The universities, right? So basically, we are measuring the way the universities are performing through different research papers and patents filed and published by the universities, right? Because nowadays each of the university and each of the, even our industry, right, each of the organizations are taking into account the number of white papers and the patents filed by them year on year, right? So this is also seeing a gradual increase, but this probably needs to go up somewhere here to match the investment, because when the investment is happening and we are not investing in terms of numbers of research being done by the universities and the academia, this will create a gap. And when that gap is there, probably will not be able to utilize all that investment, or maybe only the chunk of people who are actually here will benefit out of this. To make sure that AI is reaching one and all, we need to increase this. So basically, the enrollment and the publishing, the research work being done in the academics. Moving ahead, AI vibrancy index. So it is sum total of the enrollment, the investment, and the publishing. So when you put all three together, you see that there's an increasing trend. So even if the industry has been investing and the academia took some time to take into consideration that increased investment and the requirement, it still is going up, which means that put together, the industry and the academia is doing good on that front. But there's always this room for improvement, and this graph, which is still not a 50 for a 45-degree graph, this should be always like this, going up and above always. Now, coming to key, any questions on that? Because this is related to us in the industry and you guys in the academy, right? In the universities and the colleges, right? Any thoughts on that? Any suggestions on that? Anything, welcome. So I'll just wait for a minute. If you have anything, just put it in the chat. We'll talk about it. Okay, so we have something which says highest adoption of AI.
Yes, sir. There is one question.
Yeah, so it says which industry has highest adoption of AI? It's very difficult to say that because when I talk of today, 5 years back, I would have spoken about the heavy industries that were taking advantage of this. But today, almost all the industries and market. I'll come to this question. So today, when we see that, I have extensively worked in the BFSI industry. I have worked in the medtech industry, which is medical technologies, and worked for the biggest medical players. I'm working in the tech industry, which is the most advanced thing in Akamai, which is the intelligent edge platform, what we have in Akamai, right? believe me, all these industries have AI embedded in their action plans and roadmaps. When I was working in BFSI for global banks such as Citibank, Bank of America, Banco da Vivienda, these are all global banks ranking 1 to 10 on the scale of it. Each of these processes, they have AI there, whether it is a debt clearing process, whether they're clearing houses, whether it is on the predictive analytics on default, or their fiduciario, which is the trust system, they have AI there. Similarly, the insurance wing of the BFSI insurance industry is using AI to a great extent. When I come to the medtech industry, oh my God, they're using it like anything. It's on the next slides. You'll see that few of the products created by Google, have predicted the cancer cells with a better accuracy than the human ways of doing it. So that industry is also adopted it, right? And in our world, which is the complete tech world, which is either Akamai, Google, or Microsoft, AI is just bread and butter of that roadmap. So I would say today the traditional industries I will not talk about, let's say, which is the MSMEs, which could be a fabric industry. I don't know about that, definitely, because they need to adopt and invest in that area. But other than that, all the advanced industries and at scale, they're using it and using it very, very, very largely and on a very wide extent. What is the role of AI in market emerging? Does this mean that in emerging markets, what is the role of AI in emerging? Yeah, Anjali, please go ahead. Okay, so in emerging, when you say emerging markets like India or Latin America, or I would say emerging markets, APAC, Asia Pacific geography, what we have, and India is part of APAC, right? A huge role to play, because we have larger problems to solve, larger problems related to safety and security on our roads, larger problems of population, larger problems of pollution, larger problems of managing the traffic chaos what we have on our roads, right? Larger problems of solving our medical infrastructure, or our connected cars, right? So all that makes it a more I would say an area or a market which needs AI more and more. And automatically, when I say that in APAC, where the population is high and AI will come up and we'll automate a lot of those things, will it eat on our jobs? So that's always a second question attached to when we talk about emerging markets. Of course not. AI will only create more and more opportunities. Any digitalization, anything which involves machine, will create more and more roles, jobs, and opportunities, because you as human do not only do repetitive work, but you actually use something which will help do that job more efficiently and smoothly, and you yourself will able to focus on more complex and critical things. So for instance, when digitalization was adopted by the banks in India, there was a huge noise, and people were opposing it, that we'll not have many vacancies in the banks coming up. And today we see it, right? 20 years back and today we see we have the number of banks what we had is more, the number of roles in those banks what we have is more. Okay, Anjali, go ahead. Anjali, you have any questions? Okay, thanks. Okay, so that way it will not eat up the job opportunities. It will only increase the number of jobs in coming years. These are few key trends. I think we have talked about it. I have just included it for the sake of numbers to give you the impact it is creating in the industries, right? Now see, increasing research papers on AI 7 times more since 1996. 7 times more, which is a huge number, 700% more increase in number of research papers. 20% of AI papers on Scopus were affiliated with European authors, followed by China 25% and US 17%. So when we talk about AI, we always, maybe USA is one of the largest players, but the European Union as a whole is leading that way. China followed by China and not US. So which means it is equally distributed in all the geographies, across geographies. Of course, we have to gain that pace in India, and we have started using it, but we have to get that momentum and go ahead. Similarly, we have some other numbers and trends which are just to highlight the fact that AI is doing quite good in and around the world. A patent boom. So basically, when we are talking about the research being done in the AI field, so we see, just look at this thing. So it was just lying down somewhere because we never had the systems to explore and experiment. When this happened, 1980s, just see the growth. And almost from 2012, the last phase of what we were talking about AI, it's an exponential growth in the patent filing as well as the scientific publications. The scientific publications, basically, you talk about something and you file it, and but the patents are more and more, you have to do it and show it, right? So that is why it needs more and more systems. So just see this growth after this phase, and which of course shows that the research is doing good, although we need a lot of more investment, a lot of more focus on that, but the trend is upwards, and which is a positive sign. Moving ahead, again, some key trends in AI. Most of the patents are related to machine learning. Of course, deep learning is a very wide and it's a very complex field. We need to develop a lot of other systems to support that, of course. So whenever we talk about AI, it's mostly we mostly think about ML, whereas ML is just one of the techniques there, but 89% of the patents, whatever has been filed in AI relates to ML. The machine learning growth was 28% from 2013 to 2016, which is also huge. Similarly, we have certain other key trends on the research part of the AI. So I'll just move ahead. These are the few milestones what AI has achieved for humans, and the key milestones what humans have achieved in the area of AI. 1980, Kai-Fu Lee and Sanjay Mahajan developed Othello Bayesian learning-based system to play the Othello. Imagine, so playing Othello through AI, that was way back in 1980, which is 41 years back. Similarly, we did something remarkable, 1995, 1997, IBM's Deep Blue system. I believe you would have heard about this because that system defeated Garry Kasparov, the chess maestro there. And again, 2011, IBM was leading the way with IBM Watson computers. It's a big achievement of IBM, although they, as of today, they are using it differently. And as far as I can see, IBM Watson has not reached where they wanted to, although they're using it in a varied way, and they're more focused on it. But probably in a decade, definitely this investment and this research of the IBM will pay them off well. 2000, and just when you see that, when the moment we are crossing 2011-12, almost every year we have a milestone there. So which also says that in the recent years, the environment for working and researching in AI has been more conducive because of several reasons, because of the availability of the funds, because of the availability of the better systems, because of the availability of the research papers, and also industry and academia adopting AI related stuff on their agenda. In 2018, Google's DL system, deep learning system, achieved an overall accuracy of 70% while grading prostate cancer in prostatectomy specimens against the human accuracy of 61%, better than human accuracy. So I was talking about this. So this is where AI is taking us, and AI is still it's in its nascent phases. It has to grow and do at least 1,000 times what it has done today. So I believe this will help humans a lot in coming years. Again, it's a research outlook for different geographies based on certain success factors for using AI, and then geographies like North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. So making systems secure against hacking. So North America, it's a high priority. Europe, high priority. Asia Pacific, high priority. Latin America. So Latin America, everything is high priority because they're still reaching there. So there's a spread of AI indices in different geographies based on the priority and the need to work on those areas. I'll move ahead. That's the continuation of different business functions. So we had a spread of AI in geographies. Now it is in different business functions. So one of the questions was like, which industry, right? So just see in IT, significant impact. In customer service, it is moderate impact, but there's a huge role of improvement. And that is why you have IVR system today. When you call to a customer care, you mostly talk to a bot or some recorded messaging, which is a bot through the customer's contact centers, right? In sales, the impact is low, the leader is still going up, and this will really help. The penetration for sales will be enabled and channeled by AI in few years. Finance and accounting, marketing, R&D. Just imagine R&D, it has a low impact where it has to grow. So this is the area which will help all this, but then this has to go up. Manufacturing, corporate, legal, of course, legal, procurement, and HR. These are the areas which are still trying to cover up and come close to all these leading areas. Of IT is leading the space as of now. What are the new frontiers? What are the areas where it will grow more? And I would say, and this thing says in all the areas, whether AI is present or not present with a significant contribution or just present, AI is going to be there in all the areas, and whichever industry or the segment is not going to adopt that, they are going to lag behind for sure. Now, AI technology landscape, talking about how the technology landscape in AI is. So moving ahead, we talked about machine learning. So machine learning, and I believe in previous sessions, they would have covered this. I have just included so that we could just reinforce and just talk about it one more time, that the different ways of doing it. So in machine learning, we have statistical learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning. We all talked about it. On the machine perception, there's this computer vision. We have a challenge related to this. In our next slides, then speech recognition, natural language processing. So we talked about this. Multi-agent collaboration, and knowledge representation and reasoning, and then crowdsourcing and human computation. So this is how the tech stack looks like. So machine learning, machine perception, multi-agent collaboration, human machine interface. So human machine interface is AR, basically augmented reality and bionic and humanoid robots. Multi-agent collaboration has algorithmic game theory and robotics and autonomous systems. And machine perception is basically through a machine, you are percepting a human behavior or basically cognitive knowledge of the human behavior through computer vision or speech recognition, language processing, which is NLP again. And then machine learning is statistical learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning. So these are the different layers of AI techniques. Okay, more interactive here. So I have tried to create it and take it from different sources to make sure that we should be able to talk about it. Now, what are the challenges for AI for tomorrow? What do you think? I mean, I would need maybe answers probably from everyone. We'll talk about it. What are the challenges for AI, and what are the challenges what AI could solve for us from different industries, from in our day-to-day lives? Just give examples from industries, data lab, anything you guys feel like talking about. Any challenge that you see AI will solve, or any challenge that you see could not be solved, anything from that space, type in. I'll wait for a few minutes and then we'll talk about all those and then we'll move on this challenge. So I'll wait for your responses. Any challenge that AI can solve for us, or what are the challenges for AI?
What happened, sir? What happened when emotions will become in robots? What will be the situation then? Because he don't have any IQ level, so he will work according to the emotions also.
Okay, so you're saying, will the robot will be would be able to understand the human emotions? So let's suppose you're interacting with a robot in your house or your somewhere, right? Will it be able to understand the human emotions? Is that your question?
Yes, yes, sir.
Of course, it should be. Of course, it should be able, because that is why you're training it. That is why you're trying to impart the human intelligence to it, and you're calling it as artificial intelligence. So when you have a human emotion of, let's say, saying no, let's say getting angry, the way your facial expressions and the muscles uh, uh, behave are different when you smile. So it should be able to take that into consideration, scan it, and then understand. The accuracy should improve with the time, but it should be able to do that. Any other challenges? Anything what you feel like, anything like in BFSI industry, in cars, customer retention for
In chat box, students are saying the participants, medical therapy is one of the area they are saying. Then challenges it can solve, customers, retention for BFSI, faster decision making.
Yeah, of course. So medical therapy, they're already there. And I give you the example of the prostate cancer prediction. Of course, there's a lot they can do there, and this will definitely benefit. This particular thing is going to definitely benefit the mankind. On the customer retention, this is already being done at a great extent. Not complete AI, but there are different machine learning techniques that they're using to increase the customer retention. Like, so you are being offered several features and offers from a particular bank based on your credit report, based on your transaction, based on your salary, based on your location, based on different character traits. So they, all that is being done to make sure that you feel privileged and you feel that somebody from the bank or the bank with which you have a relationship is taking care of you. And that is in return trying to, we had this thing we used to do when we were working with the almost all the banks in the core in the core banking systems. So basically and then it we take care of that in almost all the banking systems. So whenever we have an interaction with the customer to one of our applications, we try to understand the behavior, the needs, and then probably give customized offers. When you do that, of course, the retention will be impacted. This was also a very good use case, I think, Srimoi. So a very good use case indeed. Any other challenges that you see? Oh, thanks to you for bringing it up. Any other challenges that you see? If not, we'll talk about it in our next slide. Challenges with personal broadcast. So when I say, let's say personal, okay, there's something on the chat. challenges with personal broadcast. Okay, you might have used Facebook Live. No, if not used, you know what a Facebook Live is. So basically, you're broadcasting yourself and maybe an event and going live. So going live was not that easy, right? So live was when we were watching a cricket match, maybe happening somewhere in Delhi, sitting in Nagpur, we were able to see that. Maybe happening somewhere in England, and we were able to see that from India, right? So that was live. When I was a kid, going live was a big thing, right? And I used to think that, okay, how they're playing there, and not in a fraction of a second I'm able to see it here, right? So that's how going live was a privilege, and no more a privilege now. Going live was so much costly. It involved crores of rupees for those for the TV channels. Now today you have a Facebook account, you can go live with no cost there. So this is the kind of progress it has made. But what are the challenges with it, right? Now let's suppose, how do we what the challenges? There are basically three set of challenges: scale, production, and search. So what is the scale? The amount. So basically the numbers required to support the personal broadcast. So like, how do we manage the high fan-in of streams? So basically when you have a stream going on and there are a lot of people and a lot of other videos coming in, how do you manage that? And that's in billions. The second is, how do we minimize ingest bandwidth wastage on low viewership streams? So basically, you are going live, I'm going live, and other crore people are going live, but there is an ingest bandwidth attached to all that, right? And nobody's like, when I'm going live, who will see me? There's nobody to see that, right? So, but the amount of bandwidth which is required to make that happen is high. So which is a wastage. How do we minimize that or optimize that? Production. How do we provide tools to deal with multi-camera streams? Now let's say there's a cricket match going on, and there are not one camera, but there are hundreds of cameras going on, and they're recording it. But you at one time just see shots from one angle or one camera, right? How is that happening? How can we make that more and more useful, right? And what are the tools to do it? Because when you stream it, there's no one angle to it, right? When you see an election rally, when you see a cricket match, a football match, or a film shooting, a recorded as well, right? But a recorded is still easier because you do a lot of editing in that, and it's not live. But when you do it live, it's very difficult to understand the best shot from the best angle and then stream it. How do we provide on-the-fly editing tools to stitch in streams, text, etc.? Now, whenever a live is happening, you want to give a subtitle, a live subtitle. How is that possible? When I'm speaking, there should be a subtitle in, let's say, in Tamil or Telugu or Spanish or French. How can that happen while I'm speaking in English, right? So how do we have those tools there? Or maybe coming three different streams coming together, and we are able to show that in one single screen or one single video. Now the search. Now let's suppose we want to see something we want to see something live about home construction. How do we create better houses? There's some stream going on. How do we get the best result out of the millions of streams going in and around the internet? How do we flag problematic streams? So basically streams that might contain violence, nudity, copyrighted content, etc. Right? So when you're at home, you want to protect your child or kids from a violence or content which involves nudity. When you are in industry, you want to protect yourself from a copyrighted content because you cannot use that likewise. So there are certain challenges, because when AI is there, everything is on internet, you can access anything and everything, but there's a limitation to it. Who should access what? Are you legally capable and allowed to access that? So all that challenges are there for AI. Now, let's pick one challenge like search. Let's see what are others doing. When I say others, big giants in the industry. Okay. Facebook Live. So I was talking about Facebook Live. So currently this number would have gone up. It was a few months back. Facebook has 7,500 content moderators. Just imagine, like what are the different kind of contents coming on Facebook, and there are 7,500, almost 7,500 content moderators there. They were finding it very difficult to scale this model with human intervention. And when it comes to live video, it's because if there are 7,500 content moderators, Facebook has 50 crore users or more than that. And any point of time, there'll be more than 10 lakh, 15 lakh people going live. How can you moderate all that content on the fly, on the go, basically when they are live? They had planned to use AI in a big way to solve this filtering or cataloging, like which category is a violent category, they could blur it, or which involves a copyrighted content or content which is not suitable for children to see and all that, right? So they used AI for that, and they are very, very successful in that. Till today, you would have seen when there is a content which violates something, either you get a message or a pop-up, or screens are blurred, or you get automated responses on that. So basically, their plan is their AI system will watch all the videos recorded and uploaded and the live videos, and then on the fly make decisions to categorize and limit the audience viewership. So all that they're doing, and they have been doing it successful. So Facebook was one of the better examples, because almost all of us know what Facebook is, know how to use it, and we interact with it on a day in and day out basis. Twitter Periscope. So again, Twitter is also a social media platform. They also had the similar problem, and specifically, I would say more because the weightage of Twitter in terms of creating ripples across the world is much more than Facebook, because the heavyweights, the governments, the political leaders, the presidents and prime ministers of different countries, they interact mostly through Twitter. And there's and as we were knowing, right, in the last couple of months, there's a lot of talk about fake news related to it, and the kind of impact it is having on society. So they started working on it they created a team called as Cortex, which is also their core AI team. Keeping track of all that, they created a product called as Periscope to scan all those videos and categorize and make sure that the way it is intended to be used is being used in the same way, and none of the policies are being violated. It would not have been possible even if you have like 5 lakh employees or 10 lakh employees doing that. It's very, very, very difficult. But AI has solved that challenge to a great extent. Now, why we should concern ourselves with AI, right? We are like normal human beings, not related to academics or to industry. What is there for us, right? Some of the products or some of the features or some of the systems in near future will not be possible without it. There's no way you can build something without AI. So that will, and when there's a limitation to a product, and products are ultimately used by the end customers, which are the normal human beings or the common human beings, that will not evolve. Like the personal broadcast example, what we had, right? We'll not be able to grow our business because we'll not be there on the search part of it. So let's suppose, and we'll not be able to go up the value chain. So basically, when somebody is talking about or searching about a particular solution and we provide it, and the system is not trainable, or our system is not that trainable to get optimized and come in that search, which basically today that is called as SEO, they call it search engine optimization. But this fact is much more than that. So we'll lose on a lot of those opportunities, and in terms, the growth of our business will be impacted. Competition from the cloud. So we all know what cloud is and the kind of impact it has from the business and in all the industries. And when that will happen, we'll not be able to unlock a lot of capabilities that I was talking about, right? Because We'll not know what's happening in that particular area through a particular video, and we'll miss on all those stuffs. What are the capabilities, right? I mean, how AI can help in this problem of broadcast, searching, predictions, language services, content augmentation, analytics, cache placement, and efficiency. So basically searching, right? So whenever we have a system, we have a system in our house, let's say a computer or a laptop, and you want to safeguard your kids from accessing something which is not suitable for them. So there are algorithms, and there will be advanced algorithms through AI which will flag it when they know that, okay, this is a child accessing the content. Predictions for power and network load modeling. So basically, predicting how much infrastructure or the capability is required to do a certain kind of an activity. Similarly, you have a video summarization, automatic subtitling. On the same front, we have the analytics capabilities, and again, cache placement and efficiency. So there are multiple capabilities that will be enhanced when we adopt AI. Now, cloud will impact AI like anything. It will help the process get faster of adoption to AI. The reason is the major organizations, right, which are using the AI and building products, are racing towards cloud. They have their own cloud and they're selling it like anything. And we have an era where almost everything is on cloud, right? Like Google, your GCP cloud platform, Microsoft Azure, Amazon, and IBM. And it matters because it will, as we discussed, because it will help us move up the value chain, which means it will make us more impactful, help us contribute more, thus in return gain more in the business. Now, what is Google doing? Talking about the giants, right? Google, Microsoft, Amazon, in this space, what are they doing? So they have already announced, I think, when Sundar Pichai was there in the annual conference, he announced that a couple of years back that Google will be the AI first approach company, and that's how they're moving in. They announced they have this TensorFlow, which is an open source platform distributed by design. They have GCP, which is their cloud platform, and they have a video intelligence as well, which is categorizing and classification of videos. That's what Google is doing. What is Microsoft doing there? So Microsoft has the Azure, and it is just one of the fastest. I think AWS is the biggest, but Azure is the fastest growing cloud platform. They have this open source cognitive toolkit. Again, cognitive is with the human knowledge and reaction in a particular situation. What is Amazon doing? So they are not just not only Amazon, but all these, right? They're also acquiring a lot of AI based organizations and labs. Like they are acquired Annapurna Labs, and they have this AWS AI track. So AWS is their cloud platform. Other than that, on that cloud platform, they have certain AI capabilities already embedded and being sold as offerings as well. So they have this AI services, they have AI platforms, they have AI frameworks, they have AI infrastructure. Like if you want to use the machine learning, so on top of AWS, they have this Amazon machine learning platform, Amazon EMR, Spark. And so they have created a set of products on top of cloud, their cloud platform, AWS, and they are racing ahead with it. Now, what should we do? I mean, what should we do as part of the value chain, or part of the industry, or the university? The first and the foremost important thing is picking up the right problem. Now, there are certain problems for which you might not need even AI, because those are so trivial, and you pick up something for that, and you invest a lot of time and you research capabilities, won't help because you don't need there. Similarly, You pick up something which is very futuristic. You don't have the resources, you don't have the system to research on it. So you'll not be able to solve that problem. Of course, you will be able to contribute, but the kind of contribution you'll be looking out of that investment will not be there. So picking up the right problem. So until and unless, even in our day-to-day things, right, asking the right questions is so important. Understanding the problem statement is so important to make sure that we reach to the right answer, reach to the right solution, because even if the problem is slightly changed, the solution to that will change, and which means there'll be a deviation from the point where we were trying to reach and where we reached. Avoiding original research. So there is so much of research already there, right? So when we start from zero, let's say, how can we research and create something new? That is not required, because there's a lot of research already there, and for us to work on that and take use of that, that's all free and available there. So just use that rather than trying to reinvent the wheel altogether. So pick up the right problem, see that whatever is available, and then try to create something out of that and use all those available models rather than just starting from scratch. Actively partner with cloud providers. When you're trying to do that, or one industry is trying to do that, reach out to the cloud providers, because they have already the capabilities there. So when you try to build a model, Amazon might have some capabilities in a form of a product already there. So you will never have the resources to create such a product in a short run. So just go there. It's on a subscription based. Use those and make sure decrease the turnaround time for you, which is basically achieving that in a shorter period of time. Now, what are the challenges? The first is it is very costly. We have to make it cost effective. It's very expensive because today storage, we have so much of data. Storage is expensive. You might have to use certain other tools and products to work on a broadcast problem, like they are talking about Amazon Mechanical Turks, right? So these are manual classifiers. The security is another problem, because it is all, machine learning is all about training a system on a set of trainable data. Why would a customer give their data to you to train it? Nobody does that. We have strict data policies all around the world, like GDPR in Europe, right? So having that real data is also a challenge, because they not allow you to have that. Leveraging public and cloud data sets, again the same problem what we discussed. Scaling is hard. Scaling is hard because, let's suppose, when you're for example, for the broadcast industry or the broadcast problem we were talking about, right? The video 10-minute video, it'll be analyzed frame by frame. So each frame will be captured, analyzed, and then there's another frame, right? So 10 minutes you'll have millions of frames there, right? And we have like billions of hours of video sets available there. So to analyze that frame by frame and come to a conclusion, it is very memory exhaustive, process intensive, and then it is very costly, because you store it and then you analyze it. That's a very costly affair. And then optimization requires expertise. So do we have the expertise required to work on certain things and then optimize it in our day-to-day thing, or on an average basis? We don't have that. So that's also a challenge. So that's where okay, so conclusion part of it. How is AI helping us? So it is allowing us to peek inside the content we are delivering. So it's not just that we are in a broadcast industry or a Netflix or for a Hotstar. They are not just delivering the content. They are also able to analyze and categorize and make sure that it is reaching the intended audience only. So that is how it is helping us achieve that. Going forward, it is going to be very difficult to sustain in our marketplace if AI is not there, because we'll miss on a lot of features and capabilities. And secondly, we'll be able to create a lot of value out of our business offering and our product based on AI, because we can not only give just the product, but a lot of other features associated with that particular product with the help of AI. We discussed about different industries, right? Like in BFSI, you're not just giving the BFSI services, you're also offering in return of the engagement what a customer has with the bank or the financial organization. So there are several by products or sub features you're offering along with the main feature as because of AI, and that is becoming possible. So that's what AI is doing for us, and much more than this. We reached to the conclusion of it. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, ask to the bot and not to me. I was just joking. So any questions now? Welcome. So we'll spend the next 30 minutes on Q&A. Any questions, just go up, talk about it. Any problems, any experiences, anything, more than welcome, and I'll try to answer as far as my capability is there. So
thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session. It was really a very informative and helpful session. Now let's start with the question answer session. So dear participants, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask the questions. Or you can also write in the chat box. Yeah, there is one question, sir, in chat box from Shri Datta. For NLP, can it work on both asynchronous and synchronous data?
Of course. It will work on both. I mean, you just have to train your model and it will work on both.
Yeah, any other question?
You can ask anything. I mean, if it's not about AI, that's also okay with me. I'll be more than happy to answer almost anything and everything related to industry, anything coming to your mind. Just go ahead and ask about it. Data lake. Okay, so a data lake is a way of storing data. So I'll traditionally we had like data warehouses. So when we actually started storing and analyzing the data, so we had like data warehouses, which was like storing data in vertical layers. So you have a database, which is a data warehouse, then you have data marts, and then you have schemas, then you have tables, right? Whereas and then you had a ETL job or a certain loader which will fetch data from different data sources and have it dumped in the data warehouses. Whereas data lake is a horizontal layer, which is like storing all the data sets at the same level. So you're not categorizing into a database, a data mart, and then maybe a schema and then a table. So each has in a data lake, every piece of data or a data set as an index or called as an address. Basically, when you access that, you just go to that index and fetch it. So the retrieval is faster, the processing is faster. That is the basic difference between a data lake. But creation of a data lake is a costly affair because you are just dumping almost everything there in an horizontal fashion. So it needs to be highly scalable and distributed in case you want to have that used for your systems. We had created a few of the data lakes. We worked on Microsoft Azure to create our first data lake. Again, we worked on AWS as well to create a data lake for a different enterprise. But the thing is, mostly when you talk about an enterprise data lake, it must serve as a single source of truth. So because you're not saying that you will have data from a particular segment on an area, you should bring everything and just dump it on the data lake, right? So you should have data from all the areas, and then you should be able to process it. So it's a more costly affair, but a more I would say a more capable way of analyzing and working on BI analytics. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other question?
Thank you, Srimoy.
Thank you, sir. My question is, in point of view programming, as industry always focusing on the programming structure and total software-based companies. So what do you think, Python is the only solution, or daily in next future also, what type of languages should the student go through about the artificial intelligence for like the programming structure?
So, okay, it is not language specific or not even technology specific, right? Because that paradigm will keep on evolving. Currently, of course, Python has been doing rounds, and we all must know Python. That's the case today, right? But it is not limited just to Python, because a certain use case, we could be able to achieve through Python, because there are certain libraries and functions which are easily accessible and can be used in Python, right? But the mindset and the problem statement for AI is much more important than any of the languages, right? Tomorrow you can have a certain other altogether a tech system which will help you achieve something as a low level coding platform where you do not need to code a lot. So it will be mostly of configurations. But of course, knowing the language helps understand all those configurations and the underlying systems, which in return, which helps you create better systems, even if you're working on certain language independent or platforms. So today, of course, Python is there. If you ask me, focusing more on data structures, right? DSN algorithms is so important. That's the most important thing, data structures and algorithms. And then, of course, you can use those in any of the languages or technologies. Any other question? If not, I hope all of you are vaccinated.
Yes, sir, we register.
Oh, all registered. Not yet vaccinated?
Not yet, sir.
Okay. Get vaccinated, and yeah, if you don't have questions, I'll just say such things. Or
Yeah, so
perfect.
yeah. So participants, I think so. I hope everyone has got the satisfactory answers for their questions. So once again, thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session. And there is one instruction for the participants that for your today's attendance, you have to submit the feedback form. And now I would like to announce that today's session is over. And we will meet tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. And for day fifth day of session, that is on AI types of technology required. So you all join at right time. Thank you, sir. Thank you all participants. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye, sir.